the strategic importance of SAT-7 in the Middle East is that SAT-7 is contributing in strengthening the Christian existence in the Middle East, because this has been shrinking for many years now. People are leaving, immigrating, looking for other ways, out there in the West or in Europe. So SAT-7 is helping, strengthening the roots and also the fruits of the church in the Middle East.
Welcome to the Unconventional Ministry Podcast. I'm Dennis Weens, your host, the Senior Impact Catalyst at SAT-7 USA. For those that are new listening to this podcast, SAT-7 is a Middle East broadcast media ministry based in the Middle East and has 4 channels, 2 Arabic channels, a Farsi language channel, and a Turkish channel, and making God's love visible to everyone in the Middle East and North Africa. Our guest today is the Executive Director of the Arabic Channels and Digital Media, Rami Halaseh. So, Rami, welcome to the podcast, and it's exciting to have you on to talk about what God's doing to build His church across the Middle East and North Africa.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dennis, for having me. It's a true pleasure and a privilege to be with you.
I was looking through your LinkedIn profile and see that you have quite a lot of experience with Haggai Institute, and a lot of our listeners will know Haggai. You've been the national coordinator for Youth for Christ International. You've been a presenter with Trans World Radio. These are all core ministries that our podcast listeners will be familiar with. You were a consultant with ExxonMobil in the UAE and Iraq. So you bring a lot of experience to your role as executive director of the Arabic Channel. So we're talking about SAT-7 Arabic Channel and SAT-7 Kids. As I travel, a lot of people just love SAT-7 Kids. It's so innovative and pioneering. Yes. So as you think about SAT-7, we've just celebrated 28 years, and I think I joined SAT-7 probably in about the 4th year. As you think about the 28 years, what are SAT-7's, some of their significant contributions to the church in the Middle East over these 28 years?
Yeah. Well, what a great and humbling introduction, Dennis. And we consider it, I personally consider it a huge honor, actually, to be a partner with the Lord Himself in the building of His kingdom. It is a true honor. And of course, in the different arenas, seasons of our lives, the Lord utilizes us and instruments us in a different way, in different ways, as He wishes and as He sees best. Well, SAT-7, as I'm sure our viewers may know, and as you mentioned as well, when it started in 1996, it started with a very big ambition to reach the whole Middle East and North Africa region for God and with the love of God, and make God's love visible. So looking back then, since 1996 and looking today at SAT-7, I believe that no one can doubt that this is not the work of man. It is the work of God Himself.
Amen.
To start in 1996 with only 2 hours of broadcasting being repeated 24/7, and then a few years after that, we started, of course, with the Arabic channel, with the channel programs for adults, and some of the programs were for kids as well. Later on, the Lord allowed that a whole new channel for kids to start in 2007. And then in 2006, of course, just 1 year before that, because we used to broadcast our, the Farsi programs on Arabic as well, where we had a block, for the Farsi world. And then the Lord gave us this a huge responsibility and a gift in 2006 to start a whole new channel for the Farsi world. Later on, 2015, the Turkish channel started. And all of that was only with the TV media and the satellite. The Lord opened a whole new world of opportunities, of course, via social media platforms and digital media as well. So I don't think we can ever finish if we start talking about what the Lord has been doing in SAT-7 and through SAT-7 for the church in the Middle East. So when we talk about SAT-7 as the first media provider, the first media ministry out there as a TV media ministry through satellite, I used to hear people as a viewer, as a even myself, we were blessed to have SAT-7 in our living rooms, of course. But there are Christians in the Middle East that had no access to church, and they expressed it when they said SAT-7 has always been our church at home. So, you can imagine the what a huge blessing it is to be able to worship God, to learn about the biblical truth, just sitting in your living room, being served on Christian media, on TV, and the beauty of it is that SAT-7 was able to penetrate closed countries, closed, homes even,
Right.
because of that potential, because of that opportunity.
Yeah, and when you think of SAT-7, it's not just four channels, but SAT-7 has become a brand of media in the Middle East, right?
Exactly, exactly. Not just a brand, but a leading brand where other, initiatives in media, Christian media would, follow the trace and follow the steps of SAT-7. And that's a blessing where we can be contagious in a good way, where other organizations, churches, and now in the world of cyber media, the sky is the limit.
You know, when SAT-7 started, many denominations, mission leaders, organizational leaders said it's really impossible what Dr. Terence Ascott wanted to do,
Correct.
Christian satellite television on satellites in the Middle East. And there were just so many obstacles, and many agencies, leaders, just saw the historic obstacles to the distribution of the gospel in the broader Middle East and North Africa.
Mm.
But SAT-7 has overcome that in pioneering new ministry models, partnership models, funding models.
Right.
But as you think about today, you're the executive director of the Arabic channels. What are some of your challenges today as you
Mm.
look in terms of continuing these 28 years of history now, as we
Yeah.
look to the future? What are some of your challenges?
Well, to be serving in Christian media in general in the Middle East and North Africa in itself is a challenge, because we're in the midst of a majority of course, a non-Christian world. Christians have been always a very small minority, in this whole region of Middle East and North Africa and the the Arab Gulf as well, because that's also in our map of our broadcast footprint. So some challenges could be related to governments in general. Some other challenges are related to faith systems and traditions and other religions, of course. Some challenges are related to access to public domains or permissions to even practice the different freedoms that human beings have that right to practice. It's not always easy here, and sometimes it's the challenge, regretfully, unfortunately, is from within the Christian community. So most countries are close to Christian media. Even when we started as SAT-7, we can see that there is some difference today. There are countries who are opening up in terms of media, in terms of innovation, in terms of all the technology. However, it remains a challenge to serve and broadcast media, Christian media, into those countries, and that's the blessing of having the satellite, not only the social media. In many cases, local laws and regulations makes it harder, Dennis, for local Christians to operate in media or to even go with a camera in the street. It's still the case even today, let's say in Egypt, if you don't have the right permissions, and those right permissions can be a very strong, a challenge to get them. In many cases, believers from non-Christian backgrounds will face persecution if they decide to appear on screen. And the mere and the very simple action of just sharing your testimony could be a life or death decision, honestly, in some of these countries. We have some challenges from within, as I mentioned, from within the Christian community, such as the ongoing challenge of keeping the balance in terms of doctrine, for the different denominations here. So many other challenges in terms of Christian media.
So I encourage our podcast listeners to sign up for the emails because we're telling so many stories through email, through letters. And if you're listening from the U.S., you can go to sat7usa.org. If you're in the Middle East, sat7.org. If you're in the UK, SAT-7 UK. So get on this and get the stories. And I was reading one recently about a SAT-7 youth project, and this is an Arabic youth project in Egypt. SAT-7 was invited to give a workshop at Cairo University. I think this really speaks to the trust the broader Middle East community has in SAT-7 as a Christian media brand. Talk to us a little bit about this event where you cooperated with the government university in Egypt and you were allowed to do a workshop. I think that's pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and it's called the YES project. YES is the acronym for Youth for an Empowering Society. So SAT-7, of course, SAT-7 is a Christian media. SAT-7 is a ministry to show God's love, and to make God's love visible. However, SAT-7's ministry is not limited only by what goes on TV or what goes on the screen or on social media, because we believe we have a holistic ministry. That's very Christian and it's very biblical. It is one thing to tell people about the love of God. It's a whole different experience when we go and build bridges with the people on the ground. And that's, I give all the credit, of course, to the Lord himself, because he opens the doors and he shuts the doors. So when he opened this door for our Egyptian team, led by Rafik. Rafik is the lead of this project, lead producer of this project. We said, we want this project to allow SAT-7 to go outside of the studios and outside of, behind the camera and be there on the ground with the people, with the young people, with the students of universities, with projects and initiatives that empower young people for employability, for care for environment, to show that we actually, as a media, as a Christian ministry, we do advocate for those areas. So this project at the Cairo University, and of course, Cairo University is one of the most important universities in the Arab world, actually. It's the second oldest university in Egypt, and it's the third oldest university in the Arab world. And this project was around, media, of course. It was in the mass media faculty or the college. And the workshop was tackling issues about, topics about media, about environment, and how can we work together, and how can we empower young people. So it's driven by our vision, yes, to make God's love visible, but not only on screen, as I mentioned. It is the initiative and the obedience, to be light and salt, to be open, to penetrate new domains and explore opportunities to build bridges and serve humanity as well as a whole.
So I encourage our podcast listeners to get on those email lists, get the stories, read the stories, pray over the stories. And Youth Empowering Society is just one of many projects. And there's many innovative, pioneering projects on the other channels as well. And that kind of leads to my next question is, what is the Arabic channel, SAT-7 Arabic and SAT-7 Kids? What are you doing that's innovative that our podcast listeners would be interested in?
Yeah, everything that we do is innovative.
Actually, that's pretty much true.
Right. Let me say it this way. SAT-7 Arabic has always been a media ministry that is driven by God's potential. Now we're talking about virtual production. Virtual production is a must in today's world of media. and that's something we're tapping into. We're already, setting up our studios for virtual production. And the importance of virtual production is that it helps SAT-7 not be limited by location or by sets. It will release us to be more innovative and more creative. And, for example, we can have people who are sitting in the middle of maybe the capital of UAE or Saudi Arabia or whatever, meeting in the same time in the same location virtually with people who are sitting in Beirut or in Egypt or in Amman or in. So that's the beauty of it, where we bring people closer together. Of course, social media it's a daily ongoing
Right.
progress and innovation initiatives that SAT-7 is actually taking on daily basis. We're having a whole transformation now with our strategy of promos or promotions and how we promote our programs to the audience and the viewers. We're tackling pressing issues. In the world of media, we don't believe that there is any taboo, because it's the freedom of expression, and we should tap into this as people who love God and who serve God and who are free in Christ. I can share about one program, Dennis, which
Sure.
is I believe is very innovative, but also had a very high need nowadays, especially with all of the trouble and all of the conflict and all of the bloodshed that is happening around us in the region, that hasn't stopped. It's been happening for a long time now. It's called the Voice of the Church program. And the Voice of the Church program started as a response, of course, to the different crises that happened over the last 10 months, starting with September with the earthquakes, with the storms, and then with 7th of October and all after that. So we saw the need for a live on air hotline for prayer, where people would call in immediately, directly on TV, and people in the studio, jointly produced by our studios in Beirut and in Cairo, to respond to prayer requests, and
Very
also
good.
take it as an opportunity to mobilize the church for prayer and give voice to church leaders, to pastors, to ministers, to have their testimonies and have their influence being shared on our screens. So this has been the most innovative for now, and I would say the most recent program we're using and we're serving the Lord through.
So this is very interesting, and I remind our podcast listeners that to stay innovative and pioneering, as you've heard Romney talk about, it takes resources. SAT-7 is based on gift income. We don't sell airtime. It's based on gift income, and a lot of people think of cash gifts, but SAT-7 USA can help in planned gifts, and we encourage you to plan out your giving. It's very important to have an estate plan. The majority of Americans haven't even done a will, let alone thinking through their estate plan and maybe even doing a trust. You could transfer stock instead of a gift, cash gift. You could transfer stock, marketable securities. You could give through your IRA, your minimum required deduction. If you're at that age, you can transfer real estate, business interest. Tithing business gives you enormous tax incentives and relief. You can give vehicles, cars, RVs. There's many, many ways that you can steward resources that will keep programs like Romney's talking about on the air. And each of these programs, each of these channels, each of the social media initiatives have audience relations teams. There's studios. There's a lot of cost involved. But SAT-7 really wants to make God's love visible to everyone in the Middle East and North Africa. So just our time's running out here, but just a little bit about the importance of social media, because everybody thinks of SAT-7 as satellite, but social media, I believe, is becoming more and more important and really critical to fulfilling the vision and mission of SAT-7.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dennis. And if I may add just one idea on what you mentioned, Lee, where for to encourage our viewers and the listeners to to be obedient and invest in the work of the Lord through SAT-7, because the strategic importance of SAT-7 in the Middle East is that SAT-7 is contributing in strengthening the Christian existence in the Middle East, because this has been shrinking for many years now. People are leaving, immigrating, looking for other ways, out there in the
Right.
West or in Europe. So SAT-7 is helping, strengthening the roots and also the fruits of the church in the Middle East. And to answer your question about social media, yes, absolutely, because social media has brought us even closer to our viewers. Back, in the beginning, in the before the social media era, we had the people writing letters, paper letters to SAT-7. Then we had the emails where correspondence happened through it. So that was, I would say, it took a long time for correspondence and for our viewers to receive our responses and all that. But now with social media, it is prompt, it is instant, it's real time correspondence with the viewers, and it helps us even more know the not only the numbers but also the souls, the people themselves, to actually be corresponding with a real person out there simultaneously and instantly, through social media. Also, the impact on the younger generation, because nowadays we're talking about 70% of our region, at least, the Middle East, are under the population is under the age of 30. Those young people, their first media outlet and resource are the social media. They will go to social media. So SAT-7 is there. SAT-7 Arabic. We have 9 brands on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube as well. Our channel on YouTube. Not to mention our video on demand application, mobile application, which is called SAT-7 Plus. So the Lord has blessed us to be able to be present in all of those outlets and all of those platforms, to be closer to our viewers, and to be more attentive to their needs. Where we have, and I mean, the report that we get every 3 months, I mean, every quarter, about the viewership and how people are corresponding with our social media brands is. I can say is marvelous. It's glorifying to God to see the thousands of people who are asking for prayer, who are seekers. Actually, they're non-Christians even, but they're seeking for the truth, and they're asking for Bibles and for asking tough questions that will actually lead them to the next step of exploring God's love through SAT-7's ministry. So yeah, we can speak volumes about that, Dennis, but I know the time is limited.
Yeah, we could talk more and more. Time is up, and thank you for coming on and talking about your role and how you're stewarding the vision of SAT-7 through the Arabic channels. We appreciate your work and ministry. And
Thank you.
just to remind our podcast listeners, read some of the stories at SAT-7. That's SAT7.org, or check the USA site, SAT-7, SAT7USA.org, and sign up and get some of the stories. And then as you read the stories, pray for the ministry across the Middle East and North Africa. So, Rami, thank you for joining the Unconventional Ministry podcast.
You're most welcome, Dennis. It's been a pleasure for me.
This is the Unconventional Ministry podcast. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends and leave a comment. SAT-7 is a Middle East and North Africa broadcast media ministry making God's love visible and the gospel available to everyone in the Middle East and North Africa. SAT-7 USA has resources in helping you honor God while protecting your family. You can avoid another regret, which is the failure of not creating an estate plan. Through a partnership with Financial Planning Ministry, SAT-7 USA provides Christian experts to assist you in preparing your will or trust, all at no financial cost to you. Visit www.SAT-7USA.org and click on the tab Planned Giving for more information. SAT-7 simplifies the process and makes it easy for you so that your family and friends don't have to bear the burden and regret of your failure to create an estate plan. Thank you again for joining this episode of the Unconventional Ministry Podcast.